Welcome to Laptop Radio. Today's topic is what is Bitcoin stamps? I have Mike in space with us. He is the inventor of stamps. Hello, Mike.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm really excited that you're here to talk about Bitcoin stamps. It seems like there's a new renaissance that is going on right now. First, why don't you tell us your story?
Yeah, I go by Mike in Space on Twitter a lot of the time. A long time Bitcoiner, got into Bitcoin around 2013, was very interested in art on the blockchain from an early time. Counterparty 2017. Counterparty, if you don't know, is sort of the proto NFT platform that existed far before NFTs were on Ethereum. That tends to be the popular platform these days. And yeah, just had a lot of fun there on Counterparty for many years. More recently, there has been an innovation called Ordinals on Bitcoin. This came out late last year, and it really drew the attention of a lot of people, a lot of developers and audience back towards NFTs on Bitcoin. That kind of inspired me to create what we're calling Bitcoin stamps. It's similar to ordinals in that the data is on chain. The NFTs themselves exist on the blockchain, except we're doing it in a slightly different way on the counterparty protocol. We're just having a lot of fun. We're building out the ecosystem at the moment. It's something to behold.
What is an ordinal?
Right. An ordinal refers to ordinal theory. And basically, what it is, Casey, who came up with it, it's a way to track individual Satoshis. So within Bitcoin, Bitcoins are divisible by 100 million. And what you can do now with ordinals is you can encode data that's tied specifically to these sats, as they're called. And then you're able to trade them around. You can write some art to a sat, and then I can send it to you, and now you own this art. What's novel about this is that the data does exist on chain. If you look at most NFTs on Ethereum, the way it works is it's a pointer. So you have a token, and then there's a path to something like AWS or Arweave. The art itself does not exist on the blockchain. And that's done for a number of reasons, primarily cost, because it is expensive to write this data to the blockchain. The new hot thing right now is putting the data right on the blockchain itself because it's permanent there, it's immutable, no one can delete it, it'll be there for your grandkids.
Awesome. I'm super excited about ordinals and stamps, but there's a difference between ordinals and stamps.
Yep.
As far as I know, ordinals is just one of one and it's on Satoshis.
Yeah.
Versus the stamps are not prunable.
Yeah, I'll give a little background there. The way ordinals works is that it writes to the witness data. This is sort of a data structure that was introduced with SegWit, the SegWit upgrade a few years ago. And the advantage of doing it this way is that there is a cost savings. Basically, writing an ordinal costs about a quarter of what it would otherwise cost just because of how it's constructed within this witness data. The trade-off there is that the witness data is prunable or discardable. When a node downloads it, validates it, it can just safely get rid of that data. Some of the claims of the immutability and the permanence of ordinals, there's a debate there. Some people say it's not a big deal. Others point to the core devs already talking about pruning this data because, they hate anything that isn't the monetary use case of Bitcoin. The way stamps is done, they are more expensive to mint because we don't benefit from the witness discount. The data is encoded within the UTXO set itself. This is getting a little technical, but the idea is that the data persists across every node and it can't be removed in the same way that the witness data can be removed. So the data persists in a far greater way than ordinals. So you're basically paying for that permanence.
Yeah, I've minted a few stamps and it's been fun, but it was also very expensive compared to ordinals. But it's gotten cheaper.
Yeah, well, part of it, a big factor actually, is the mempool itself. The mempool can fluctuate from 1 sat per VByte to several hundred sats per VByte. If you look at it right there, the cost can go up 100x, right? So right now, the sats per VByte, it's about 20, I think right now, last I looked. It's reasonable, But a month ago, it was insane. And the art use case was completely crowded out. And I don't blame people. We're also looking at new ways of encoding the data. The idea is that it works well for a 10K series. Like if you look at things like Bored Apes or CryptoPunks or any of these PFP series, they tend to have a lot of common traits, right? It's like an ape and one has a pair of glasses and then another has a hat, but it's all the same ape. So the innovative thing that we found is that you really only need to mint the traits themselves, right? You don't need to mint the 10,000 apes. You only need to mint that hat, mint those pair of glasses, and then you're able to assemble these characters. Now, it all still exists on chain, which is the point, but you're getting rid of the redundant data. And so that's one way we're looking at bringing down the cost somewhat.
That's awesome. So basically, you're saying that the system could interact as a generative thing where it puts different elements together from different places.
Yeah, it works well with a big series like a 10K because then you have 10,000 characters that all kind of look similar, right? It's just like one has green hair, one has blue hair.
Yeah.
Well, you can really compress that down. That's SRC 721.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. What are some of the early arts on stamps?
Yeah, I mean, the early art is a lot of testing we were doing early on. And then things like Super Mario and Hello Kitty, just things we're finding on Google. It's like, okay, we need to test something. Let's grab some pixel art. But from there, it grew into something amazing. We have some real artists on the protocol now, Stamp Pepes, Stamp Punks. There's Homer Punks. There's a lot of cool stuff that various artists have done. And I'm really enjoying it.
Awesome. Yeah, I made a bunch of series on them and it's been kind of fun. I think I learned a lot about being a pixel artist with stamps because of the size limitation.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, some people complain about that, but it
Yeah.
really kind of hones your skills. And it's like you have this very restrictive canvas and it forces you as an artist to be creative, right? Not you really have to take your time to do it right because I'll just give you an example with like a CryptoPunk. It's a canvas of 24 by 24. And so that's about 300 to 500 bytes. It really depends on the mempool, but maybe that'll cost you 40, $50 to mint right now. Anything more complex, then you really got to get creative with it. I'm upfront with people. It's like stamps are expensive to mint, but what you're paying for is this immutability. That stamp is going to be there in 50, 100 years as long as Bitcoin is around.
Yeah, and Bitcoin is the earliest chain and it has this prominence. That's one thing I'm excited about art on Bitcoin blockchain because we've collect Bitcoin and there hasn't really been a lot of utility. People compare that with gold, but now you could do things with it, like put art on it, which is amazing because as an Ethereum artist, the art, the media is never really on chain, it's on IPFS, which is a little bit different.
Exactly. And I think the reason why people got so excited about ordinals and to some extent stamps is that it's finally delivering on the promise that I think everyone thought NFTs were promising this. Like people came to the NFT space and they thought the art was on chain because these are tokens that are on chain. And then they slowly realized, oh, it's not. And oh, look what happened with Goblin Town, right? They had some dispute over royalties on OpenSea. And what did the artists do? They replaced all the IPFS data with a middle finger. And it was hilarious. But at the same time, it showed how mutable this is. It can be deleted in an instant, right? And if you have thousands of dollars invested in a Goblin Town, you might not be crazy about the fact that they just decided to delete it one day. So yeah, that's why I think people value ordinals and stamps. It's that they are on chain and even the artist can't destroy it.
Yeah, you cannot change it once you mint it because it's going to be there forever. Versus on the Ethereum blockchain on OpenSea, for example, once you mint something, you can change the file.
Yep. There's pros and cons. I mean, it's great because there's flexibility there. So if you make a mistake, you can fix it. And I think some people, some artists definitely value that. But if you're looking to have something permanent and immutable, then put it on stamps or put it on ordinals.
Yeah, I think it's fairly easy to do. My first stamp was actually a $sign. And what I did was I make a 24 by 24 square.
Yeah.
And I used the keyboard and put a $sign on it. And I think it cost me $200 because the
Mm,
dollar sign was really, really, really clear. And,
yeah, yeah.
and then it took 3 days to come. But I think the emblem vault people basically helped me. And then I began to do pixel art, which is awesome. I think my skill set has gotten a lot better as a result of stamps. And it just makes me very, very excited because they're on chain and you can have edition of it, like different edition of it. On Arno, it has
Exactly.
to be one to one. But for stamps, you can make however many you want. And you can create a community of just even from one stamp, which is amazing.
Yeah, and we're seeing them spring up. There's a lot of Telegram channels focusing on various projects. And yeah, as you mentioned, we're integrating with Emblem Vault. That opens up a whole other marketplaces. Basically, the idea with an Emblem Vault is that Bitcoin private key is stored in this vault securely, and then it can be traded on Ethereum marketplaces like OpenSea. So we're
Mhm.
already starting to see that a bit.
Let's go back to you. What inspired you at the beginning? Did you just look at the articles and say, hey, they're basically making NFTs on Satoshis, and you're like, oh, let's just make it on chain
Well,
inside the blocks?
well, basically, like I said, I've been involved with Counterparty since about 2017.
Mhm.
I'm one of the original Rare Pepe artists. That was
Oh,
probably the
okay.
biggest series on Counterparty.
Yeah.
When Ordinals came out, it's just my brain kind of went to Counterparty. And it's like, well, you know what? I like what they did with Ordinals and it is novel, but it was also like, we can do this with Counterparty. We have all the tooling. With Ordinals, they had to kind of start from zero, right? There was no tooling, there were no wallets or anything. It was just this
Yeah.
Ordinal theory white paper. And to their credit, they've done amazingly. With Counterparty, we've been able to bootstrap very quickly because there was already this tooling. There was like a wallet and explorers and dispensers. So we were able to spin it up on Counterparty pretty quickly. I just like to throw experiments around and see what sticks to the wall.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah.
I remember doing the Arno craze, which is probably January, end of January, February. I told one of my friend David about Arno's, and we spent an hour or two going over bird stamps, like a free
Yeah.
wallet. And I was like, oh, he's basically OG because he got an edition of a Bitcoin NFT. And I was thinking, I was like, oh, NFT has edition, but Arno's didn't. So then stamps became a thing just April.
Yeah.
It was just a month ago, which
Yeah.
is crazy. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up additions, and that is one of the advantages where it does result in cost savings. For example, like on ordinals, if you want to do like 100 characters or something, you're going to have to mint 100 ordinals.
Yeah.
With stamps, because you can assign a supply to it, it's really a single mint, right? Now, these are going to be fungible, right? They're all going to look identical to one another, but
Yeah.
it's able to put these out at significantly lower cost.
How many people are working on the stamp project right now besides you?
Yeah, I created the protocol, but I'm
Mhm.
not really a developer. There
Mhm.
is a core team of developers, two or three guys. And then there's also just like this ecosystem that's kind of organically growing out of it. For example, with SRC 721, that completely came out of left field. It was
Yeah.
about a week ago at this point, and a new developer just came in and he said, hey, I wrote this new standard and I'm minting it. I was kind of hoping that he would have just waited. It's like, give us a week, give us 2 weeks, please. We will integrate this well. But he just wanted to go full steam ahead, and that's fine because this is how it works. And but now we're scrambling a bit because we're trying to integrate this new standard into stamps because it is a really great standard. We do want to do that. But yeah, it came up completely out of left field. So when you ask who's working on it, as far as I'm aware, there's like 3 or 4 dev teams, but there could be others that I'm not even aware of.
Okay, what is the new standard and what's the difference?
Yeah, yeah. So the new standard, the one I mentioned, SRC 721, that's
Yeah.
where you mint the traits, right? So it brings
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah.
cost down of a 10K set because you only have to mint those traits.
And then there's also SRC tokens.
Yeah, well, yeah, SRC 20, and I'll be frank about that. It's basically a photocopy of BRC 20.
Yeah.
BRC 20 is the token standard on ordinals, and it's been very popular. It was brought to stamps because that's just what the market is demanding right now. There's DRC20 on Doge. There's
Yes.
these tokens on every chain. So it was just sort of inevitable that it would land on stamps. For a few weeks there, it kind of just devoured stamps. Like you go on the Explorer and every single one was SRC20. It looks like art has kind of clawing its way back, and I'm happy to see that.
I'm
When I
gonna
go
make
on the
more.
Explorer, I see more art.
Yeah.
But yeah, for a while there, it was just wall after wall of just SRC20 tokens. And that's fine. I'm happy that there's these other use cases that are growing on top of stamps. But my personal preference is to see the art.
I've made a bunch of art at the beginning, and there's a community, and I saw some of my art featured there. But I always at NFT NYC and a few other conferences. And when I checked, I was like, I love the art and the feature of the art. And then all of a sudden, I came back from other conferences and I see all these tokens, and no one really knows how to buy them. And it's not really
Mm.
in a wallet. It's been really wild, wild west. And then there's a new invention. It's been growing really fast, and there's just all these changes. But the community is so excited.
Yeah, and every week there's something new. Like a BRC20 has already been replaced by ORC20 on ordinals. And it's like, well, every day there's like a new standard. We'll see what's left standing in a few months.
What is your ideal vision of stamps? How do you think it would look like in, let's just say, 1 year?
Right. It's hard to forecast out 1 year. We started up in April. I would hope that it continues to grow at a steady pace, but I'm realistic about how quickly the space evolves. I find that stamps will serve a niche community of
Yeah.
artists in the long run. We're still minuscule compared to ordinals, and I'm fine with that. I don't think we're going to overtake ordinals. Ordinals is massive. It's also kind of like a Swiss Army knife. You can store any sort of file type on ordinals.
Yeah.
With stamps, we really do focus on art. That's our thing, you know?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I minted really early on Arnos. But after a while, though, it becomes a little bit different. I kind of like stamps just because it's kind of fun. And I feel like it's just very challenging to
Yeah.
actually make art that small. And working with SVGs, for
Yeah.
example, how do you compress it so the size is smaller? It's a little bit more fun because it's challenging.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, if you're an artist and you want to get more exposure, you'll probably get that exposure on stamps because ordinals, there's like 10 million ordinals out there right now,
Mhm.
and you're competing with every other artist. Come over to stamps, try it out, and you might build up a following.
Yeah, I think the community is also very different. I don't know if there's even a Telegram Arnos community. It's just massive now with so many inscriptions, I think. And then with stamps, the community is
Yeah.
smaller, but everyone is super excited and everyone is kind of like on fire in terms of how they help each other. Like
Yep.
new people come to the community all the time. They don't know how to mint. They don't know how to actually buy a stamp. And dispensers are like vending machine and a wallet. And then some of the wallet are a little bit different. It's been kind of fun. I think once you learn how to purchase or collect a stamp, then you know how to collect other stamps. And for me, it's like going to the
Yeah.
post office. There's different stamps that you can purchase. And so you basically collect a bunch of stamps and then you have a collection of them, kind of like post office stamps. That's how I see it. It's super simple.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. And we are working on the tooling. I know right now we're kind of tied to some very old wallets, counterparty wallets, but
Yeah.
we're definitely working on that because we want to improve the user experience. And we've had some great talks with the various wallet makers and marketplaces. And
Yeah.
I'm very positive about how that's going to turn out.
What are some needs in the stamp space or the stamp ecosystem? If I'm an engineer and I wanted to contribute, what is missing out there in the ecosystem that I
Yeah.
can create?
Oh yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of low-hanging fruits. Right now, we are working on a reference client wallet, but definitely more wallets the better. Explorers, marketplace integrations, minting tools, everything. We have some basic tools, but they all need improvements. If you want to contribute, absolutely. There's a lot that can be done.
Tell me about this stamp development fund. That's a really cool idea. How do you use a fund? And do you see the fund growing in the future?
Well, to be honest, I don't really promote it actively. That fund was set up by a benefactor. Very early on, one of the artists said, "Hey, I want to contribute some of the profits I've made to the dev fund." And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, fine. I guess we'll have to create a dev fund to accept that donation. After that, others have donated. I don't actively ask for donations if people want to donate, and we're very appreciative of that because it does go towards development. And we release transparency reports whenever funds are spent from the dev fund. But yeah, no, it's definitely helped out, particularly early on. The very first few months, the AWS bills for the Explorer was in the thousands, right?
Yeah,
And so I was like, are we going to be able to make it out of the month, right? Because
yeah.
who's going to pay these bills? So the funding has definitely helped in that regard. And yeah, it's helped us hire various devs to work on the website and various tooling.
Awesome. I think I created a piece that I donated to the dev fund, but I just wanted to mention it because the cost of storage and labor, and other tools are really expensive. And for something to grow really fast, of course, the projects and the ecosystem always need talent and tools and also money to pay them, especially if you haven't raised from investors. And sometimes investors have their own motives. I think a fund is a really great idea to allow the
Yeah,
company to grow and have some kind of independence.
yeah, absolutely.
What other innovation that may not exist today that you could foresee? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one thing we saw very early on, Magic Eden, which is a marketplace, they created this standard on top of stamps. It's a name service. The idea
Oh.
is that if you were to develop this name service, it could be used for websites, like directing money from person A to person B.
Mhm.
It was more of a proof of concept. I'd like to see someone develop that further. I think that would be exciting. We're looking at interactive stamps.
Mhm.
So those are ones that are almost like a website embedded within the stamp itself. There's been a few cases of this already where there's different games, like you can play Tetris in a
Tetris, yeah.
stamp. Yeah, we're looking at doing audio stamps. There's been a few artists have asked for that, and I think we can do that. Right now, it's just a dev bottleneck. It's like the devs are working on the day-to-day stuff, just keeping everything working.
Mhm.
And so adding features takes a bit of time, but yeah, I'm hopeful we can return to that soon.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think I might know how to do the audio one based on an HTML file. I've been coding and I just finished my Python class at Stanford. We were doing interactive games as the last lesson, but I've been doing creative coding for a while. And when I look at Tetris, and I'm just like, I can do this. And I actually
Mhm.
meant a HTML page. So I'm super excited. But I actually know a way to do audio with HTML. So I might test that. I think that would be kind of
Yeah,
cool.
try it.
That might be different from what you guys have in mind, but I've been playing with audio files and HTML audios for a while, outside of all the normal coding stuff, but just as experiments. So I'll try that.
Cool.
I've seen the growth of the community, and I think community is always important. Our Telegram group basically grew from a little bit to a lot over the last 2 months. Do you foresee it growing by a lot more?
Well, the main Telegram has about 4,000 users and
Mhm.
it grew very fast.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's hard to predict, but I mean, that's probably the biggest Telegram group I'm involved in. I'm involved in a lot of the counterparty Telegrams, and I don't think any of them are have that
That
many.
big.
Maybe the Rare Pepe one does.
Mhm.
So I'm excited about it. There's also Discord, but personally, I can't stand Discord, so I never visit it. But from what I'm told, it's pretty popular. I've
Mhm.
gone in there once or twice. I'm too old to deal with Discord.
Me too, but I'll use Discord for other
Yeah.
stuff, other tooling. I must say that the community is super awesome because everyone always is asked like a lot of things about, oh, how to use it, how do you mint it, where do you buy stamps? I make some classic art stamps, and I noticed that without even promoting it, people basically purchase them, which is pretty cool. And people appreciate other people's art, which is awesome too. I have people reach out to me and they were like, "Oh, do you buy my art?" And then they sent their links. I think that kind of give and take is really cool. And then there's also someone basically does Twitter Spaces and they do giveaway as well, which helps onboard people. Do you feel onboarding, like if you're new and you wanted to get into stamps or actually put your art into stamp compared to Ethereum where you have to sign up for MetaMask and go to OpenSea and mint something, or you can go to one of these gated community where you have to get accepted to actually make art. You
Yeah.
have to almost be referred by someone famous, which is really hard. Do you think it's hard to be onboarded to stamps?
Here's my perspective. And again, I'm more familiar with how the counterparty community operates.
Mhm.
and less so with how Ethereum communities operate. But from what I've seen, it seems like a lot of the Ethereum projects are sort of top down, right? You have a company like Yuga, and they come up with Bored Apes, and then it kind of trickles down. You have a user base that are promoting it, whatnot. It's very different on Counterparty, and this is sort of the whole ethos
Mhm.
of Counterparty, where it's all community driven. It's never really top down, right?
Mhm.
You have these collective of artists, and they mint their own art, and that's sort of how it works.
Yeah.
And that we've kind of brought that over to stamps. It's nothing like what's happening on Ethereum. It's
Yeah.
all community driven, it's grassroots. And I think that's why it's sort of endured as well. It's like Counterparty's been around since 2014,
Mhm.
and through the highs and lows, through the bear markets. And the reason it's maintained and persisted is because of that community ethos, right?
Mhm.
Where it's not just about making money. It's like a lot of times you go into these Counterparty communities and people make art and they just give it away,
Mhm.
because it's fun to do that as well. I forget what the question was, but yeah, I would say that Counterparty is very community driven.
Yeah, I make art on Ethereum, and I could tell you OpenSea is free to sign up,
Yeah.
but then there's other communities where you have to basically get in by an ambassador or do an
Yeah.
application.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to get in. And you have to wait. Yeah, they're gonna ask you like what you're gonna make, and I mean
Right.
it's amazing. It's actually pretty crazy. I think there's one community that I still haven't been able to get in, even though I told them that I'm gonna make nerfs, newer rating stills, which is kind of one of the latest researcher thing where you generate 3D models with 2D images with machine learning. And
Mhm.
like I still couldn't get in. But with stamps, you could just do different things. As long
Yeah,
as
no,
the size is
there's no
small, you
gate
can do it.
exactly. But even if it's big, if you're willing to pay for it, you can do it. Yeah, zero gatekeepers on stamps, right?
Mhm.
Zero. Anyone can just participate. No one's going to tell you no.
Yeah, it's pretty easy too. You just basically get a free wallet or a counter wallet. And then from counter wallet, you can mint it or you can use other company services.
Yeah,
And then you just basically fill out the form, send the Bitcoin, and then that's it. For the first time ever, you can basically use your Bitcoin to collect art, which is kind of cool because I think some people are afraid of using it because it might go up in value. But again, the art is kind of special because it's going to be permanently there and no one
yeah,
could
absolutely.
erase it.
And what I will say about that is there are minting services, and those are just for convenience. You don't need to use them. You
Mhm.
can download Free Wallet. It's
Mhm.
freewallet.io, and you can mint your stamps directly there, and you don't have to pay any kind of service fee other than what you're going to pay the miner, right? You're obviously
Mhm.
paying miner fees because that's how Bitcoin works. And so, yeah, definitely you could do it all on your own. It's open source, and yeah, no gatekeepers.
Yeah, just like Arnold's too. I was installing the Bitcoin Core node.
Yeah,
So you guys understand what decentralization means,
yeah,
which is kind of cool because you can purchase Bitcoin by installing a node. It makes you understand what it means to have a system that is trustless. Because
yeah,
then you have many people who also have that same node. And then when you do that, you'll see the different dates. And it's like having a whole system onto your computer.
yeah. It's fascinating.
Yeah. And then with stamps, you basically could see it on the Bitcoin blockchain as well. And then the dispensers are also listed on Xchain. Can you talk a little bit about Xchain and Mempool
Yeah,
and what those are used for and some other tools that I might not even know
sure.
of?
So, I mean, Xchain is the main counterparty explorer. Most people use that. There are a few others, but Xchain is sort of the longest running one within the community,
Mhm.
and it works very well. Other Xchain hosts what are called dispensers. As you
Mhm.
mentioned, if you want to sell your art, you basically set up a dispenser, and the idea is that users are presented with like an address or a QR code, and they just send the Bitcoin to that dispenser, and then they're automatically sent back the token. So it's sort of like an atomic swap.
Mhm.
And so that's very convenient. There's also a decentralized exchange on Counterparty called the DEX that works really well as well. And then, yeah, you can also trade stamps on OpenSea if you're more familiar with Ethereum marketplaces.
Yeah, or emblem vaults.
Yeah.
I collected a few stamp punts when I first came out. I really am bullish because I think the permanence and the immutability of Bitcoin blockchain, even though it's a little bit slow and I'm falling asleep waiting for things to go through, it's still there and no one could erase the data. Like even if you don't see it in your wallet, as long as it's there, it's there forever.
Yep.
So that's like the coolest part of it is it's really all the attributes of the Bitcoin blockchain. You can see it working, especially in art, which is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anything you want to share that I have not asked you?
I would just say I would direct your audience to Stamp Chain if you're at all interested in
Mhm.
stamps. Read up a bit on it, maybe mint one if you're curious about it.
Mhm.
Look at ordinals too. Ordinals is very, very cool. I think there's room in the marketplace for both personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just here having fun.
Yeah. So Arnos is arnos.com. And then stamp chain, where you'll
Yeah.
see all the stamps. There's a lot of
Dot
pixelated
stampchain.io.
yeah, stampchain.io. You'll see a lot of pixelated art at the beginning, but I think it's just a lot easier. But then there's also SVGs with rounded art, normal art, which is
Yeah,
amazing. And I think as we get used to creating and get really good at technology, I think those art will be better. I've been playing with SVGs a lot. For me personally, because I also circuit, are used to printing t-shirts with a cutting machine. You have to do it a
right,
certain way without a lot of details. Stamping to me is very similar. You have to learn how to make art that looks good in very simple format so that it doesn't cost a lot of money. Because the more color you use, the more expensive it will be. So,
right.
oh, can you talk about base 64?
Yeah, so base 64 is just the way we're able to put the data on the blockchain. You start with something like a GIF or a JPEG, and if you Google JPEG to base 64, there's plenty of encoders. You basically upload your art and it spits out a long string of code. And this code basically represents the binary data of the file itself, but in a way that can be written to the blockchain. And so you take this data and you preface it with the word stamp colon, and then you're able to mint these in free wallet and it basically gets written to the blockchain and viewable through stamp explorers.
Yeah, so you'll see the digital visualization of the code base 64. Even though it's code and stuff, you'll see a JPEG
Yeah.
or like a
Well,
picture.
what's interesting is if you take an image and you run it through one of these base 64 encoders,
Mhm.
you can literally take that string and open your web browser and paste it in the address bar,
Yeah,
hit enter, and it will render on your screen.
yeah.
Right? The reason we're using base 64 is because that's sort of the standard that all the web browsers work with. Like there's other encodings like base 58 and things like that, but base 64 is sort of this web standard.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's almost like magic. They give you a code and then you can see the picture actually from it. It just makes the size a little bit smaller as well. You get the essential of the picture, which is really cool. And then also from the HTML, if you have your CSS and all the code in one page, then it rends it. That's how you could make interactive
Yeah, yeah.
things.
For web developers, they would know like you can basically substitute a pointer to an image with this
Yeah,
base 64 string. It would go right in the image tag and it'll render on your website the same.
awesome. What is one piece of advice that you have for the community?
I think one piece of advice I would have is if you have a great idea, don't let maybe your skills stand in the way. Like I'm not a developer,
Mhm,
but I had an idea and I found some developers who could build it out for me.
mhm.
And to me, so far, it's been a great success. I think a lot of people might just like, oh, I can't do that because I don't know how to code. But sometimes if you have a great idea, you can bring it to life, you know?
Yeah. I actually have one more question, and the question is directed to the investors in the system, the VCs and Web3 investors, or even token purchasers. This is pretty new, and I've seen the excitement from the community, but I think there still needs to be a lot of development and technology that makes it scale and bring mass adoption. What would your ask be to these Web3 investors?
That's an interesting question because I do take calls fairly frequently. And one of the challenge with an open protocol
Yeah.
is I don't know how you would really monetize that, right? It's
Hmm.
like you can kind of monetize it on the edges with minting services and whatnot. But ultimately, what I tell them is the biggest bottleneck we have is dev resources. So if you want to
Hmm.
throw some dev resources at some of these problems and
Hmm.
help us build out this ecosystem, that's really where you're going to make the biggest impact. And I know that's not necessarily what they want to hear because maybe they want to throw some money at things. Money does help in terms of hiring developers, but really what we're looking for, we're looking at ways to build out this ecosystem with the tooling we need to have it grow. Yeah, yeah, that's what I would say.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to more resources in the ecosystem.
Yep.
But I'm really still very bullish and really excited about art on the Bitcoin blockchain. It's the newest thing this year, and I haven't seen so much excitement in the Bitcoin community for a long, long time. And I think the stamps, the NFT art on the Bitcoin blockchain is more popular to share than the Ethereum Bitcoin blockchain. Even when you go to different conferences, definitely the Bitcoin companies are sponsoring a lot of the events. It's been pretty crazy because of the prominence of the Bitcoin blockchain. It's really inspirational. And it's kind of like when my mom passed away, actually, I mentioned Arnold in remembrance of her because it's permanent. A lot of people basically say that we're messing up the Bitcoin blockchain. The Arnolds killed the Bitcoin blockchain because it causes congestion and it's like graffiti on it.
No, I
But
mean, yeah. No, it's like my point of view is if you're paying the fees, it's not spam. This is a use case. It's a legitimate use case. We have a fee market for a reason. And it also, every 4 years, there's a halving, right? Where the mining reward gets cut in half. So either the price has to double or the security of the network falls. These are important use cases. They're filling blocks. The blocks are meant to be full so that there's a fee market.
yeah,
This is just how Bitcoin was designed. This is how it's supposed to work. People are fine to have their opinion, but ultimately, I think that this is good for Bitcoin.
yeah. I went to Bitcoin Miami, and for the first time, there's actually a gallery of Bitcoin art there. The art part brings humanity to technology. It's a great marriage, and it just balances things out.
Yeah, and it's bringing in a whole new group of
Uh,
people who might not have looked at Bitcoin before, right? So it's great. More people, the better.
yeah, and a lot of conversion of artists learning how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I shared a lot of resources in it too. If you're interested, do follow Mike. What's your Twitter account?
Mike in space,
It's
one word
M-I-K.
altogether.
Yes,
Mikein.
M-I-K-E. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then space, SPACE. You can find him on Twitter, and then there's a few tweets that he does that on board to stamps. There's a person, Breezy or someone, who summarizes the updates of stamps every week
Yeah, yeah. Stamp
that I've been
news, I
reading.
think that's really
Yeah,
helpful. Yeah. And it's funny, all this stuff is sort of organic. It's like I didn't tell anyone to do that. Someone just took it upon themselves to make a stamp news account and they
yeah.
aggregate the news of the day. And that's wonderful. That's this sort of community driven, bottom up kind of approach. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, and then if you give away stamps, if you wanted to onboard your friends, might actually, I won something and he gave me a bunch
Yep.
of a stamp. And then I basically gave them away to some of my friends. And that kind of helped onboard them to
Well, that's
stamps.
great to hear.
Yeah, it was cool. They wouldn't have like signed up for it, which
Right.
is crazy awesome. Because then the more people who have the wallet, they kind of know what it is, and then it's just easy to onboard. And you just basically just put in a wallet and put in the amount of Bitcoin, and that's how you get the stamp. It's super, super easy. But I do encourage everyone to look into it. Not investing advice. It's more
Yeah.
a new technology that you may want to explore. And if you're an engineer at Stanford or in the Bay Area, if you're looking for some cool stuff to do and you might just wanted to check it out and you want to contribute to the code, they're all on GitHub.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.